They always say the Imperium has trillions of people, they never tell you how many of them scream. When the sky tore open above our Hive city and the sirens began to howl, I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't a hero. I was just Lira, a girl who cleaned cogitators for 5 thrones a day. But that night, with the streets burning, with people running in blind panic, and with the shadow of something inhuman crawling across the clouds, I realized the truth. In the grim darkness of the far future, the front line isn't just where soldiers stand, it's every street. Every home. Every life, and mine was about to be torn apart. The Hive city of Arath Prime was loud even on quiet days, machines groaning, megastructures humming, and the endless shuffle of billions trying to survive. But on the night everything changed. That noise vanished, swallowed by a silence so unnatural it felt like the world was holding its breath. I stood on my apartment balcony, staring at the sky as it rippled, like fabric being pulled apart. At first, I thought it was a malfunction in the atmosphere shields. Then the first explosion hit, the shockwave threw me back into my room. Buildings trembled. Windows shattered. People screamed. The sky didn't just rip, it bled with the red glow of warp fire. The Vox speakers crackled, all citizens required to evacuate to lower Hive sectors. Maintain order. Praise the Emperor. But nobody maintained anything. The streets turned into a stampede of panic, families grabbing children, merchants abandoning stalls, Arbites shouting orders that nobody heard. I searched desperately for my little brother, Run. He was supposed to be home from the manufactorum by dusk. But he wasn't. I ran down the staircase, dodging frightened neighbors, and pushed into the street. Ash drifted down like snow. Gunfire echoed in the distance. I could hear something huge moving above the rooftops. The invasion hadn't even begun, but fear had already taken the first lives. A man tripped and was crushed by the crowd. A mother dropped the bag holding all her food and cried because she knew she would never see it again. I forced myself forward. I had to find REN.AT, the manufactorum block. The doors were sealed. Dozens of children and workers pounded from inside, screaming to be let out. The automated lockdown had trapped them. I hit the steel with my fists until they bled. Run! Run! But all I heard was terrified sobbing. Then the lights flickered. Something shook the ground, something heavy. Something alive. Through the smog, I saw them. Green-skinned monsters with jaws like broken machinery, orcs. They smashed through hab walls like they were paper. They laughed as they swung crude, rusted blades. Civilians ran, but the orcs ran faster. I pressed myself against the wall and prayed to the Emperor. But prayers didn't stop the world from burning. A small hand grabbed mine, Lira. It was Run, covered in dust, coughing, but alive. He had escaped through a ventilation shaft. I held him like I would never let go again, but the ground trembled, and the manufactorum doors burst open, not from the inside, but from orc explosives. The trapped workers inside didn't even have time to scream. I pulled Run into an alley as the fire washed over the street. My legs felt weak. My chest felt tight. Every instinct said we wouldn't live to see sunrise, but then, a roar cut through the chaos. A tank, armored with the Imperium steel, rolled down the boulevard. Behind it marched the Astra Militarum, their lost guns blazing. For the first time that night, hope flickered. A guardsman grabbed my shoulder. You too. Lower Hive. Move. I wanted to obey. I wanted to run. But I looked at the manufactorum ruins, at the bodies, at the fires spreading across the city, and I realized the grim truth every civilian eventually learns: war doesn't come for soldiers first. It comes for the unarmed, for us, and there was nowhere left to hide. We followed the flood of refugees deeper into the Hive. The corridors were cramped, hot, and shaking with distant explosions. People cried, prayed, argued, collapsed. Some clutched pictures of loved ones already lost. Others held weapons they barely knew how to use. The Imperium called this an evacuation route. To us, it felt like a tomb. Every so often, the lights cut out, and the entire hall froze, listening for the sound of orc boots or worse. Sometimes, we heard them echoing far above, guttural shouts, metal scraping, buildings collapsing. Ren trembled beside me. I wrapped my arm around him, whispering that everything would be okay, but lies felt heavy in my mouth. At a choke point, the Arbites were checking everyone entering the lower hive. The crowd surged forward desperately, but the judges stood firm, shock mauls raised. The entrance was narrow, the line slow, and panic was rising. A woman behind us screamed as an explosion shook the ceiling dust free. "Let us in. They're coming." Then the power cut again. The darkness lasted 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds, life changed. A hole burst through the upper wall, showering debris onto the crowd. Orcs poured through like a green tidal wave. People ran in every direction. The Arbites fired, but even they were overwhelmed. I grabbed Ren's wrist. "Run!" We pushed through screaming civilians. A man fell and begged for help but was buried under the mass of fleeing feet. A child was pulled from her mother's arms by an orc, and I forced myself not to look. War isn't merciful. Not to soldiers. Not to families. Not to anyone. We ducked down a maintenance tunnel. It was dark and smelled of rust, but there were no orcs, yet. We kept going until Ren couldn't walk anymore. He slumped against the wall, crying silently, "I don't want to die, Lira." I knelt in front of him, holding his hands. "You're not going to die. Not while I'm here." He looked into my eyes shaking with fear, but also something else. Trust. It hurt more than the wounds on my hands. That's when we heard heavy boots approaching. Not orcs, too steady. Too organized. A squad of guardsmen appeared, weapons raised. When they saw we were civilians, they lowered them. "Tunnels compromised," their sergeant said. "If you stay here, you won't make it." "Where do we go?" I asked. "Forward." He pointed to the darkness. "Forward is collapsed," Ren whispered. The sergeant nodded. "Then we dig." The guardsmen began clearing the rubble with their bare hands. No hesitation. No complaints. These people, exhausted, bleeding, probably certain they weren't surviving the night, still fought for us, and in that moment, something changed inside me. I realized survival wasn't about being strong. It was about refusing to give up. We worked together. Civilians, guardsmen, even a wounded Arbites officer who limped into the tunnel. We moved rocks, metal, shattered plasteel. Hours passed. Maybe more. Finally, daylight leaked through a small opening. We pushed through one by one until we emerged onto a plateau overlooking the burning Hive city. Dropships roared overhead, reinforcements at last. The Imperial Guard was pushing back, slowly but surely. For the first time since the attack began, the air felt livable. Ren hugged me tightly, his small voice steady. For the first time, we made it. I looked at him, at the survivors around us, at the smoke rising from our broken home, and I understood the deepest truth of all: civilians don't fight battles, but they carry the scars of every single one. And sometimes, just surviving is the greatest victory the Imperium will ever know.